They're buffing him over and over and over, and now we're at the point where he is too fucking broken. Next one, Kane. You guys will say, Darkbreaker, Kane is not that good. Darkbreaker, Kane is not broken. Darkbreaker, Kane is A tier, B tier max. But Nova Long, the best jungler in the world, is playing Kane jungle to counter champions like Aatrox jungle. He's popping off. If you know how to use Red Kane, if you know how to use the gank angles you can get with the third ability, if you know how to invade, Kane can be a monster. Hey, what's up guys, Darkbreaker here, and in today's video with the new tier list for patch 3.5a, which came out recently. And by the way, we have a new microphone. Let's go, thanks for everyone supporting. And hopefully the sound quality is better. There's still like one component missing, which should make it even better. But I think for now, it is hopefully pretty good. And I hope you guys will enjoy this tier list if you guys are doing it. And you guys think, hey, Darkbreaker, thanks again for this lovely tier list. Then make sure to leave a like and subscribe. And guys, remember, this is my subjective tier list. This is just an orientation for you guys. You can play whatever you want. Maybe buy boots. Maybe don't be an ADC that split push alone without a brain. Maybe play around your teammates. Maybe have good map awareness. That would be lovely. By the way, fun fact, did you guys know we have 20,000 Grandmasters right now in Europe server? 20,000. Inflation is kicking hard. Thank you very much, Riot. Thank you. But yeah, the star just means the champion got changed on the new patch, by the way. Star just means adjustment happened. Nerf, buff, or whatever. You guys can definitely check out my 3.5 balance change reaction. But yeah, let's get started with the Baron lane tier list. So for S+ tier, they nerfed Aatrox, but Aatrox is still fucking broken. Oh yeah, this is not in an order. Just because Aatrox is number 1 there doesn't mean he's number 1 in the Baron lane. He could be, but there is no definite order, by the way. I just want to mention it because people will be wondering, this champion shouldn't be over that other champion. They are within a tier, yes, but they are not in an order. And on top of that, sometimes tiers can be like, a champion can be S+, a champion can be S. It can, like, the margin is not that big, by the way. But yeah, let's get started. Aatrox, very tanky, super strong, tons of crowd control. I was playing Varus the other day against Aatrox, and he just ran me down. I used Exhaust on him, I used Ultimate on him, he just ran me down and I couldn't escape. Aatrox Ultimate fucking cracked. Next one, Gwen. Gwen got nerfed. They nerfed the base attack damage, which will hurt her trading in the early game. And they also changed the third ability. But the third ability doesn't really matter in the top lane because they give you level 1 50% refund right now. So if you're hitting someone with the third ability, the cooldown is almost the same. This third ability change is more towards the jungle. Do the maths, look the numbers up. It is not that big for the Baron lane, but more for the jungle position. Still a very strong AP bruiser with tons of damage and sustain. Jax, one of the best split pushing champions in the game right now. Very good duelist and also very good in team fights when he gets the head. He becomes super tanky. He has the third ability that can block incoming damage and stun multiple people AoE. Plus he has the physical damage and magic resistance coming from the ultimate, which can be really beneficial. Next one, Wukong. Wukong is a teamfight master, super strong with his ultimate, has tons of sustain with the first ability, plus Grasp, plus Divine Thunderer, plus Death Dance, plus Triumph, plus whatever else. Very, very strong in the Baron lane. Fiora, one of the strongest early game champions in the Baron lane, great duelist and scales like a truck, is not the greatest in teamfights though. High skill ceiling champion. Then we have Gragas. You can use Gragas tank with Grasp. You can use Gragas face rush. I recommended the build recently, the blue Gragas build. Or you just go full AP Gragas if you guys want to be the hyper carry and you already have enough frontline and can go for it as well. My nose again. Oh shit, sorry. Next one, Jace. Jace, probably the strongest early game Baron laner with his range form poking you down. Good sieging potential in the early game with the Heartbreaker Rush. Super strong in the 1v1. Kind of falls off in the late game against other split pushers, but overall pretty consistent in teamfights with his poking damage. Okay, wait a second. Exactly when I'm starting the tier list. Yeah, nice one. Nice nose. Next one is gonna be Mr. Crocodile Lacoste. That boy, the Croco boy, is very strong in the early game. He is super tanky. He has gap closing abilities. He has a stun, target lock, plus the ultimate that gives you AoE damage plus more HP. Overall, very good champion at everything. Like he has the whole package. A decent duelist, good frontline, and I guess also decent split pusher. What do you want? Like he also does a lot of damage. Like he doesn't really excel at one thing completely, but he has like covers everything. No, Akali. Akali didn't get changed. Oops. Akali, one of the best assassins in the game, does tons of damage. She is disgusting. She's much easier to play in the early game right now with the Shroud buff that they did a while ago. And her late game or her teamfight in general, her one-shot potential is crazy. Plus Riftmaker, Conqueror, very disgusting. Set, decent Juggernaut. The biggest problem is probably the gap closing in the current meta for him. Same applies for Darius. These two champions are super tanky. They also do a lot of damage, but kiting is a big problem against high mobility team comps, especially since they don't have any dashing abilities. For example, Wukong can dash in, Jax has a dash, Jace can poke from far away, Gragas has a dash, Renekton has a dash. These are like even Aatrox has movement speed steroid. Gwen players are using all Ghost. I mean, to be fair, you could use Ghost Flash on Darius as well, but I could add Face Rush as well, by the way, here. Mr. Face Rush. Pretty solid. Face Rush on Darius, really strong right now. Makes it easier for you to chase people. But yeah, S tier for these two champions, I think is more than fine. Next one, Riven, didn't really change. I mean, you guys can expect me, like, the meta is not getting a huge change, just from a few changes here and there. Riven, high mobility, burst, duelist, assassin, does tons of damage, has tons of mobility, but is really snowball reliant. Can still be pretty useful in teamfights, even when she falls behind in the early game. Camille, they buffed Sandra recently on the previous patch. I think Camille is still very good. Not broken, but pretty solid. I just feel like the dash nerf still hurts her. And the first ability change. Like, the first ability used to do 100% true damage, no matter the level of the first ability. And the third ability, I don't know, 8 seconds on the third ability or something. So, really scuffed. Sion, super tanky, split pusher, can be good in teamfights, can be a good split pusher as well. Overall, pretty solid. If you guys like to play tanky bruisers, then Set, Darius, Garen, and Sion are great options for you guys. Now, let's move on to Garen. Garen is overall a very beginner-friendly champion, is super tanky, and he is king of kill stealing with his ultimate that does true damage. Great. Next one, Malphite. Malphite is a tank, and you guys know my opinion about tanks. Don't play tanks in solo queue. Play tanks in solo queue, and you rely on your teammates, on the mercy of your teammates to not be inters. And trust me, currently Season 7, everyone is an inter. Don't play tanks in Season 7. Don't trust anyone. Even in Legend queue, don't trust them. Immortal players, don't trust them. Challenger players, don't trust them. Bronze players, you can't trust them. You can trust them, never mind. But yeah, he's great in teamfights, obviously, with his ultimate. He has the insane AoE knockup. Whoa, wombo combo. He's super tanky against physical damage because he can stack up armor. He gets armor from the second ability as well. So yeah, he can be a good counter against physical damage compositions. But if your ADC is a shitter, you are doomed, guys. You are doomed. Next one, Aurelia. Aurelia got slightly buffed in the Baron lane, actually, because they increased the passive damage. I think they increased the passive damage for the Baron lane, and they nerfed the damage against monsters. So a nerf for Aurelia jungle, but a buff, a slight buff for Baron lane Aurelia. Aurelia, a high skill ceiling champion in general, and also very hard to master in the Baron lane because she has a lot of hard matchups. She doesn't have matchups where you're like, I'm gonna stomp them completely. Every matchup is a pretty high, like, you need matchup knowledge and good skill to win those matchups against like a Fiora, against a Jax, against a Renekton, etc. It's not easy as an Aurelia Baron lane. Especially if you're against tanky champions, you might struggle as well. Next one, Shen. Mr. Shen got buffed for jungle. So I put a star for this, but he didn't really change. He's still overall pretty solid. Obviously, his ultimate can be great in team fights. You can join team fights. You can, if you're winning the lane, you can put your advantage immediately onto the other side of the map. But how often do you actually win your lane? Do you win your lane against Aatrox, against Gwen, against Jax, against Wukong, against Fiora, against Renekton, against Camille? Do you do that? No, you don't. So you will get outscaled and you won't be able to hold the lane against a lot of Baron laners. That's a downside. Okay, let's move on to A tier. Warwick. Warwick got buffed slightly. His ultimate has a bigger range. So, like, if you're hitting someone, it's like the width got increased, so that's a slight buff, but honestly, it doesn't really matter too much because they also nerfed his ultimate at the same time because on-hit effects won't heal you anymore from the ultimate. Just the ultimate damage itself and not additional damage. Like, if you have Blade of the Rune King, you would hit with the Blade of the Rune King additional damage onto the opponent using the ultimate, but the additional damage won't be counted as healing towards Warwick anymore. So actually, is it a buff? It's an adjustment. So Warwick can still be okay in the Baron lane. Great roaming potential with the second ability, but overall, maybe not the easiest champion to master and play in the Baron lane against a lot of champions. Akshan is a ranged champion that is super strong in the early game and can punish the enemy melee Baron laner super hard. Skates like a truck, but the downside is that he is pretty easy to gank and he is easy to punish as a jungler. As a jungler, you can camp the Akshan and put him behind super hard. Let's say you play Kha'Zix, Lee Sin, and your laner is a Camille. Camille presses ultimate, you jump on him, he's dead perma dead. Next one, Kennen. Kennen very strong in the early game, good team fighting with the ultimate as well, but he gets outscaled against a lot of champions, and he is very squishy. So also the factor that he's pretty easy to camp because he's super squishy. Next one, Yone. Yone is very scaling in the early game, not the strongest, but in team fights and when he has enough items, he can be a beast. Same explanation applies for Yasuo. That can work into the right team comp with enough setup. Let's say you have an Alistar, you have Rakan or something, or maybe a Wukong jungle. Yasuo Baron lane can be pretty good, but the problem is the matchups in the Baron lane are not that easy for him. There are a lot of champions that can stack up armor, or a lot of bruisers that are very hard for Yasuo to deal with. But overall, in the right hands, he can work in the Baron lane. Next one, the Void King, Mr. Kassadin. Very scaling champion. In the early game, not that strong, but incredible scaling. And once you have like 3-4 items, you can carry games on your own pretty much. Diana, one of the best teamfighting champions, great assassin to one-shot the backline. In the laning phase, she might struggle against few champions and might get outscaled, but it really depends. I feel like if you master Diana, just farm up safely, you can make the difference in team fights because you jump in, hit a nice ultimate, you can dash back and forth, pop, 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 pop. Can be pretty good. Tryndamere, a very strong duelist. Actually, in the early game, he is weak, but his late game scaling is absolutely cracked. Downside is if you play against high mobility and high crowd control team comps. Next one, Mr. Pantheon, Sparta himself. The problem is he is a chat in the early game, but he is a virgin in the late game. He falls off super hard and becomes a minion, a stun bot. Pretty fucking weak later on. Next one, Mr. Teemo, the devil himself, Satan. Satan Teemo. Don't play this champion. If you play this champion, you are disgusting. If you're a Teemo main, you don't have a soul. I'm telling you right now, you don't have a soul. Teemo is very disgusting in the early game, super strong in the early game. He just pokes you, zones you, freezes you. But he's very squishy, easy to punish, and I guess his late game is not that insane in comparison to other champions. Wait, dude, my nose. Yeah? Come on. Oh, god damn it. He can be pretty good though if you can set up shrooms before a team fight. 8 tier. Solid champion and solid disgusting. Dude, my nose. Where's the sneeze? Dude, do you know? When you need to sneeze and it's like coming, but it's not coming. You're like, fuck off! Where's my sneeze? Get it out! Get that shit out of my nose. Okay, next one. Dr. Mundo. Dr. Mundo does whatever he pleases. He is super tanky, decent duelist. In teamfights, I don't think he's the greatest tank champion, to be fair. Zed has become pretty popular actually in high elo and top lane. Great assassin, great duelist, great outplay potential, pretty solid split pusher as well. Not gonna lie, not that bad. Downside is if you play against juggernauts or champions that build Thunder Death Dance or something, you will not win it. Okay. For every like, I get to sneeze. Every like under the video, finally I get to sneeze. Let's go. Jarvan, overall solid Baron laner. Decent in the laning phase, great in team fights, but he obviously falls off super hard against a lot of juggernauts. You wanna build tanky, you wanna build bruiser, hey, they build Thundera, they just shit on you. Olaf got buffed in the Baron lane, actually, because now he has additional armor shred on the first ability. But, what's the but? He is a super situational pick, and in the Baron lane matchups, he needs to snowball. If he doesn't snowball, he is really weak against a lot of champions, actually. You want to pick him into high crowd control team compositions and against tanky champions most of the times. But if they have like a lot of mobility, you are fucked. Dude, my nose is fucked, actually. Nice one. Dude, do I cut every sneeze and every... okay, whatever. Okay, next one is gonna be Mr. Graves. He got actually slightly nerfed. I think in the early game they nerfed the base damage of the first ability, but better scaling. And for the ultimate, I think they slightly buffed the ultimate. So overall, he is stronger in the late game now, but a little bit weak in the early game. Overall, decent split pusher, but very, very, very scaling. Like, very scaling. Needs 3 items. Before 3 items, meh. After 3 items, he's like a Tryndamere. He's literally both crit split pushers. Next one, Mr. Nasus. I don't like Nasus. Why do I not like him? He is an incredibly slow scaling champion. He is very weak in the early game. He loses a lot of matchups. He needs a lot of time to scale, and you don't have the time with an O10 ADC to scale. You don't have that time. You don't have the luxury to just keep farming AFK. We don't play PC. We play League of Legends wildrift, and that means your ADC is O10 and the game is over before you can farm up. Don't play Nasus. You're griefing yourself. You're griefing yourself. Next one. Mr. Singed. In the early game, he's okay. Kind of weak in the early game. He loses a lot of matchups, but he's super scaling. Can be good. Like, if he has like 3 items You have a nice composition. He has a lot of playmaking potential, and he scales like a truck. Nautilus are very similar, but actually Nautilus is stronger in the early game because he has really good base stats. He has good crowd control for team fights, but he falls off and he will get outscaled by a lot of Thundra champions. Let's say a Camille, let's say Jax, Aatrox. Aatrox is farming this guy for dinner. It's like dessert, okay? It's a big dessert. Like Fiora, Camille, they just run him down for free. Vayne and Lucian, same explanation like Akshan, but they are easier to punish and not as dominant in the early game in comparison. Akshan is super fucking strong in the early game in comparison. Kayle, all pretty much the same explanation like Mr. Nasus, but she is way too scaling, she's way too weak in the early game, and you just farm her. If you play jungle and you play against a Kayle, you just come donation kills. On CD, she's dying. You just walk up, dead. If you play Kayle Baron lane, you are a masochist. If you are a masochist, feel free to play this champion. If you're not a masochist, don't play this champion. You will get punished. Every time you walk up to your lane, you will die. You will get dove, you're too weak, you lose your lanes. You will be very good level 15, but before that, you're dog shit, okay? Let's move on to jungle. So for the jungle tier list, Aatrox is still very good in the jungle, being played a lot of times in competitive even. Even in competitive, he is a prio pick in the jungle, by the way. Just want to mention it. Diana got buffed in the jungle. She was already broken in my opinion. Stays broken. Why? Tons of damage. Very good hard carry potential on her own. Thanks to her burst damage. Thanks to her mobility. And thanks to her great team fighting abilities like the ultimate and the dashing back and forth. Wukong, great ganker, insane sustain, super tanky, insane ultimate. Next one, Gragas. Gragas AP in the jungle is disgusting, a lot of playmaking potential with your ultimate. The third ability, tons of AP burst damage, great 1 vs 9 hyper carry. Next one, Morgana, one of the quickest junglers in the game right now. Super, like, you can still do blue on Gromp. I mean, I can't do it, but you can. I don't know. You can do it, but I'm kind of scuffed at it. But if you are really good at Morgana, 130, you finish the full clear. Very good poking champion. Is a super safe pick and can control the map super well. Next one, Shyvana. Shyvana is insane right now because she can power farm even quicker, get her stacks even quicker, and she becomes a 1 vs 9 dragon that just runs you down, has true damage, and is super tanky. Kha'Zix got nerfed, but he's still one of the best assassins in the game because he has the invisibility, he has the mobility, and has the one-shot burst damage against isolated targets. Still works, by the way. Lee Sin, a high mobility ganker that can snowball the game super hard left and right. He does tons of damage, he has tons of mobility, and he has a lot of sustain as well. One of the best gankers in the game. Evelynn still very good in the Baron lane. Absolute piss dumpers against you guys. You guys know why? Because you have no clue how to deal with the invisibility. Oh, dude, English is hard, man. She clears level 5 super quick. Then she just camps bot lane. She farms them for free. And then she becomes so strong, she snowballs. And she ganks left. She ganks right. She ganks mid lane. Everyone is overextended. Free kill, and then then you're just getting one-shotted. You can play the game. If an Evelynn gets like 2 kills in the early game, the game is almost over. If a good Evelynn, a good one-trick pony Evelynn gets a few free kills in the early game, you will end up losing the game. Trust me on that one. Okay, Olaf still very broken. I know they kind of nerfed the third ability damage. Just get 2 points into Q and then max third ability. Third ability still does the same true damage against champions. And you put 2 points into Q so you can jungle clear. True damage, can ignore crowd control. What do I have to explain? Next one, Yone. Kind of slow jungle clear in the early game, but insane scaling, tons of mobility, and tons of playmaking potential. Very good. Next one, Kayn. You guys will say, Darkbreaker, Kayn is not that good. Darkbreaker, Kayn is not broken. Darkbreaker, Kayn is A tier, B tier max. But Nova Long, the best jungler in the world, is playing Kayn jungle to counter champions like Aatrox jungle. He's popping off. If you know how to use Red Kayn, if you know how to use the gank angles you can get with the third ability, if you know how to invade, Kayn can be a monster. He can be a monster. Why can he be a monster? Because he does percentage damage. If you play against melee tanky champions, Kayn is a monster. Even if you play against ranged champions, the amount of invading you can do and the amount of gank angles you are finding that other junglers can't is crazy, because you run through walls. You can invade and just run through walls away to safety. In my opinion, Kayn S tier, is he broken? No. Is he strong now? Yes. He is strong in the right hands. So, not in your hands. I know, not in your hands, guys. Not in my viewers' hands. It's Batman. It's Batman. You need to be a pro to make him work. If you guys want to learn how to play Kayn, watch my latest video, or I'm gonna make a guide for him in the future. Maybe like how to find the sexy gank angles. Okay. Next one, Darius. Mr. Darius jungle. His jungle clear is really good right now with Phase Rush. You want to use Phase Rush so you get the mobility and the movement speed to catch the backliners, or even just catch the front line, get the ultimate, and then run everyone down. In my opinion, pretty strong. Maybe you just go Ghost, by the way. Phase Rush Ghost, just run them all down. Does a lot of damage, is tanky, and great jungle clear, so just focus on farming, honestly. Echo in the early game, kinda weak, but overall, very insane late game scaling truck that one-shots you. Riven, high mobility, high burst damage. Next one, Xin Zhao, Jarvan, Vi. I'm gonna just summarize them, because they are tanky bruisers that are overall super tanky, do decent amount of damage, and have good crowd control to pick off people for ganks. Jarvan is more like the tankiest out of those three. He is very good in teamfights, very good ganking capabilities in the early game, but he falls off and does no damage later on. While Xin Zhao is more like the carry between those bruisers that does a lot of damage, and Vi is like the ganking machine with the ultimate. Since we're talking about ganking machine, next one in line is Nunu, the ganking snowballing machine. He uses the snowball, ganks left and right, can snowball the map super well because he just has really good ganks with the snowball into the third ability for the CC lock. But he falls off. Overall, great tank, good crowd control in teamfights. But as a tank, as always, you fall off and you rely on your teammates to be humans. If they're not humans, unlucky, buddy. Unlucky. You will not win. Next one, Aurelia. Let's put the star, slightly nerfed, but overall still very good. Even Riot said Aurelia's jungle clear speed is super, super quick, so they're kind of nerfing the jungle clear speed, but overall she still has a lot of mobility, has a lot of burst damage, and high skill ceiling to carry games on your own if you have mastered Aurelia. Next one, Jace. Overall very strong jungler, does a lot of damage, and great poking damage in teamfights. Next one, Fiora, a great duelist that can snowball super hard, does a lot of damage in the early game, and skates like a truck. Fizz in the early game might not be the strongest, but he is probably one of the best scaling champions in the game that can just one-shot you. One ultimate in the late game can one-shot squishy targets. He, damage-wise, he scales harder than Diana, but he is single target, while Diana has better mobility and is like an AoE burst damage champion. Fizz is like the single target assassin that is slightly weaker in the early game, but S tier in my opinion. Next one, Warwick. I think the biggest problem about this champion is his team fighting. His team fighting is very bad. His ganks are good, his mobility is good, his team fighting is very fucking trash. He just struggled. Like, if you play a 5 vs 5 team fight, the Warwick will struggle. Next one, Shen Jungle. I know some people are telling me, lethal tempo, Shen. Play lethal tempo. Yo, guys are inting, man. His damage comes from... I mean, his damage comes from the first ability, which is like scaling with max HP. And you won't be able to use lethal tempo that much in team fights. Like, your job as a Shen is to make plays happen with the taunt. Taunt someone, use the ultimate to peel, and then taunt and peel. Or use the second ability for peeling. Your job is to make plays, to be a frontline, to soak damage, not using lethal tempo trying to auto-attack doing damage. If you want to play champion with lethal tempo and be tanky, you can use fucking Aatrox. You can fucking use Shyvana even. You can use Olaf even if you want to. Why would you fucking use Shen lethal tempo? Doesn't make sense. Like, he is meant to be a tank. He's not meant to be an assassin or a bruiser that just tries to run down the backline. That's not your job. Counterproductive. Conqueror also doesn't make sense. Why? Why would you need AD, by the way? You're Shen. You don't even scale with AD. You don't even scale with AD. You scale with max HP, so you can use Grasp or Aftershock, or even Fleet for energy and movement speed. These are the 3 options. Not Conqueror, not Lethal Tempo. You're griefing. You're griefing me. These comments are griefing me. Next one. Graves got nerfed. The first ability does way less damage onto monsters, so his jungle clear speed is slightly weaker. So this is gonna hurt him a bit in the early game, but overall he's still a very good scaling champion that can hyper carry later on. But yeah, he is super slow, I would say, in the early game, and he needs a lot of items to become strong and useful. Next one, Rammus. He's a ganking machine that is very tanky, but he falls off in the mid and late game because you rely on teammates, and if your teammates are trash, you will do it. It's the same explanation for all the tanks. Jax, Nautilus, same explanation. Literally. Ganking machine, but if your teammates are shit, you will not carry the game. You will not carry games as a Rammus or Nautilus if your teammates are shit. But Rammus is a great pick against AD compositions, by the way. Jax, in the early game, maybe not the best jungle clear speed, but he is a super carry in the late game. Pantheon, on the other hand, is very strong in the early game, great at snowboarding the game, but he falls off in the late game. Renekton, overall, in the early game, pretty strong. In the mid game, very strong. In the late game, he falls off. Great mobility, does a lot of damage, has decent amount of sustain. Rengar got buffed, but in my opinion, he's still A tier. Why? I feel like the meta, he is very snowbally, and if he doesn't snowball, he is garbage. He is very, very shit against a lot of compositions, and it's not easy to make him work majority of the times. If you're snowballing and you're fed, he's absolute amazing, but if not, he is absolute garbage. I should put them together in the future, by the way, so I can explain them. I've tried AP Amumu, I've tried Tank Amumu. The ultimate is obviously great in team fights. His jungle clear speed is okay. But at the end of the day, as a tank, what is it? Say it. Say it. Write it in the comments. Say it. If you are a tank, you're griefing yourself. You can't carry games as a tank. You can't. If your ADC is 010, you will 100% lose every single time. If your bot lane is shit, you will not win the game as an Amumu. 99% of the time. 99% of the time. So, what you will learn by watching this video, if you're playing tank, I think you have too much trust into the capabilities and the abilities of your teammates. Don't trust your teammates, only trust yourself. And if you trust yourself, you pick Diana and be a Giga Chat. You pick Gragas, be a Giga Chat. Carry games on your own, like a Giga Chat. Don't be a pushy team player. Team players don't win in wildrift. They don't win. I mean, yes, it's nice to play as a teammate, obviously, like as a team player. But You can also be a team player without having to play a tank and rely on the others to do damage. That's the problem. Imagine you land like a sexy 5-man ultimate at Baron. You're like, yes, I stole Baron. Yes, 5-man stun. Yes, we're winning. And then, never mind, your ADC is running down in the mid lane. Unlucky. Or your ADC is split pushing on the other side of the map. Unlucky, buddy. You lost the game. Trust Darkbreaker when he said, I played tank so many times. I wanted to record tank so many times, and it doesn't work. I mean, it can work, but if your teammates are shit, it doesn't work. Okay, enough rant. Next one, Camille. Overall, jungle clear speed wise in the early game, pretty fucking slow. Her ganks are good, but she needs to scale. Next one, Zed. Zed is overall with the ultimate, a decent ganker, can just jump and dive pretty easily. Great assassin, but I don't know. He's not necessarily the typical jungler, honestly. I mean, I've seen some good Zeds though, but the problem is he has like zero crowd control. You just jump in and rely, like, without ultimate, I don't think you can kill people. Like, you rely on your ultimate to gap close and then kill people. I think that's a problem. Overall, solid jungle clear speed. Nah, it's decent. Clear the jungle. I guess the reliance on the ultimate makes him just A tier. Okay, next one, Master Yi Tronema. I can explain it for both at the same time. Very good hard scaling champions. Can be great, but Yi is coin flip pretty much. Yi is coin flip. If you can punish him in the early game, he's a minion that will die 24/7. And Trinome, on the other hand, is like a super slow scaling champion. Not the greatest jungle clear speed, not the greatest ganker, but he scales like a truck. Both scale like a truck. Gwen, her jungle clear speed must be garbage right now. The third ability, I think it's like 18 seconds or something. Very high cooldown on Gwen's third ability right now. Her jungle clear speed is very bad. She scales like a truck though. Singed. Honestly, he is, in my opinion, not that bad. He has good gank capabilities with the second ability and the third ability. He's not the strongest in the early game, but he scaled super well. Set. Why did I put set B in comparison to the others? I guess his ganks are hard to pull off without... you need flash E or you need ultimate. Otherwise, you won't be able to get a gank off. His giant clear speed is okay. Yeah. Overall, he's okay to play. But just play him Baron lane, honestly. Honestly, Baron lane is just much better. Okay, let's move on to the mid lane. In the mid lane, we have Akali, one of the best assassins in the game, does tons of damage. Bex, long range poke, great assassin, jumping in, one-shotting people, reset, jump. Kassadin, great scaling assassin that does tons of damage and has infinite mobility. Ari, tons of burst damage, great playmaking potential with a taunt, and a great assassin that can bush trap. Next one, Diana, very good duelist, great assassin in team fights, does tons of burst damage. Katarina, she gets one reset and she wins the game. Like, you can be 0-5, you get one reset, you just wipe the whole team. It's so fucking ridiculous. Yeah, even if they have crowd control, you can make it work, not gonna lie. People don't even know how to chain crowd control onto Katarina, it doesn't matter. One of the best hard carry champions. Karma, great poking champion, great utility, insane in team fights. Yone, decent duelist in the early game, scaled like a truck, and he does tons of damage and is very hard to kill because of his mobility. Yasuo is decent duelist in the early game, scales like a truck. With the right team comp, Yasuo is almost unplayable. Almost unplayable to play against. Now we have it. Aurelia, hey. Great duelist, insane in teamfights, in the right hands, great playmaking potential. Corki, overall, super strong in teamfights, especially for dragons or barons because of his package. Jace, very strong in the early game, good poking damage in teamfights. Falls off, though, in the late game. Pyke, great playmaking potential with his roaming potential. Great playmaking with his roaming, okay, no. double. I said the potential double. Ultimate, true damage, reset left and right can be good. But at the same time, he is not necessarily a damage dealer. He relies on his teammates to do enough damage, to be fair. But your job is to snowball in the early game and get your teammates ahead. Gregor's overall very solid champion that does a lot of damage and has great playmaking potential. Galio, great utility with the taunt, with the ultimate to join team fights. And a tanky poking champion, good in team fights. Akshan, a strong duelist that scales like a truck, is very strong, like one of the best laners in the game. Second ability can be good in teamfights as well to revive people in the late game. Can be fucking good. Next one, Fizz. Fizz got buffed, in my opinion, still S tier, very strong. Does a lot of damage, needs to scale though. In the early game, he's not the greatest. But once he has like 3 items, he is very good at one-shotting people with the ultimate left and right. Okay, next one. Orianna and Ziggs are great utility poking mages that are absolutely fantastic. Long range, wise in teamfights. Singed. Overall, very solid. In the early game with Fleet, you just clear the wave, try to roam, and try to make plays happen. If you get a few items, you are super tanky, and you have a lot of playmaking potential with the second ability and the third ability. Second ability is a great counter against mobility champions because they can't use any dashing abilities or flash, and the third ability can just fling people and catch them. Very good. Zed, great duelist, great assassin, and great split pusher. In the right hands, high skill ceiling. Next one, Twisted Fate. If you want to play Twisted Fate, you need to have a big brain to make his ultimate worth it, because then you can rotate left and right, try to control the map, try to pick people off, but you need to have good map awareness. In the early game, he's not the strongest, but if you're good at using the ultimate, he can be very good. And obviously, he has the gold card to stun people, which is really, really good. Lucian, high mobility, burst damage. He just does a lot of damage and he's hard to kill because he has infinite dashes. Fiora, great duelist, great counter against a lot of fucking champions in the mid lane, in the right hands. You always want to force skirmishes in the early game. And remember, Fiora is one of the best scaling champions in the late game. And then in the late game, you can just play side lane and try to split push. Vega got slightly buffed. His last setting is, I guess, a little bit easier, and his auto attack poke is a little bit better in the early game. Doesn't really matter. Vega doesn't really care about the AD. Super scaling champion, weak in the early game against a lot of matchups and bad roamer, but he skates like a truck, and overall he provides a lot of crowd control with Event Horizon. And in the right team comp, he can be really fantastic. Like front to back tier, like you have 2 tanks, Vega in the backline, keep poking them down, trying to catch them with a cage. Very good in team fights in the mid and late game. Echo is pretty weak in the early game. Skates like a truck though, can be very good later on. Brand in the early game is strong, but I guess the downside is, first of all, the lack of mobility and roaming that he can do in the early mid game, and the lack of range in the late game or mid game in teamfights. Like, he is kind of short-sighted in comparison to other long-range poking mages that are much more safer than him. Aurelion Sol is pretty hard to play, pretty weak in the early game against a lot of matchups, can be very good in the right hands if you can use his roaming capabilities correctly and hit a nice star in teamfights as well. You can solo carry teamfights with a good AoE stun, for example. Annie is pretty weak in the early game, bad roamer as well, kinda short range, but has great playmaking potential in teamfights with the ultimate, with the flash tibbers or protoball tibbers, for example. Garen overall is a very solid tanky champion in the mid lane. Morgana, weak in the early game, not the greatest wave clear in the early game. Overall, great poking champion in the mid and late game. Provides decent amount of utility with the Black Shield, with the AoE, teamfight stun on the ultimate, and the bind to catch people. Pantheon, super strong in the early game. Great at snowballing and forcing the first blood. If you don't get first blood, you're kind of fucked. And on top of that, he falls off He falls off super hard. He can use the ultimate as a roaming tool to catch people left and right, but in the mid and late game, he's just very weak. Cannon, very good in teamfights, does tons of damage, decent mobility, kinda squishy though, and not the greatest roamer in the early game. Like, I would say in the early game, the biggest problem is his wave clear. He really can't roam or rotate. Plus, he will struggle against a lot of poking champion that will just outpoke him in the lane, or other assassins. I guess if you're playing against Akali, Zed, Aurelia, Diana, Yone, Cannon has a fucking problem. Or even Kassadin counters him as well. Or even Vex probably counters with the fear mechanic. Jumps on you, fears you. He just pokes you from far away, clears the way way quicker than you. Lux overall, decent poking champion, bad roamer though. Great in teamfights with a bind to catch people and the ultimate that does tons of damage. But I mean, there's always a plus and a downside. Seraphine, pretty fucking weak in the early game. Can be good in teamfights with the AoE ultimate to catch people. Overall, very bad at roaming, which I hate on mid laners. If you play mid lane, you want a champion that is either very fucking strong in teamfights because they are untouchable, super safe champions like Ziggs or Rihanna, or you just go assassins. Assassins are usually what you want to go for. Assassins are great in teamfights, they're also great at roaming, and they're great at snowboarding the game. Like, let's count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 assassins as plus tier. Just want to say. Kayle, very fucking weak in the early game. Very fucking bad at roaming. Very fucking scaling. Very good in the late game though. Hey, in the late game, level 15, 4 items, 5 items. Can be good then. But besides that, not a big fan of Kayle mid lane. To be fair, in the mid lane, it's easier for you to scale than in comparison to jungle, because surviving in the mid lane is much easier, because you can hack the turret, and it's not as easy to dive in comparison. Okay, let's move on to ADC, Dragon Lane Healers. Varus is fucking broken. He got buffed for the last 6 patches. What is wrong with you, Riot? What is fucking wrong with you guys? They are buffing Varus first ability. They are buffing Varus passive. They are buffing Varus second ability, third ability, ultimate. They are buffing him over and over and over. And now we're at the point where he is too fucking broken. He's just too strong, and I think you should just pick him. Just poke people down. Pew, boom. Just one-shotted. Like, I think I've played him against Aatrox. Aatrox at 80%, I think 70 or 80%. I do 1 QW, boom, one-shotted. That was so fucking funny, actually. I need to highlight. I need to find every patch and write down Varus buffed, Varus buffed, Varus buffed, Varus buffed. Yeah, he's very safe champion in the backline that just pokes you from far away, does tons of damage. I think the biggest downside is the lack of mobility in comparison to other champions, because if you don't have a peeler or a frontline, you will have a problem. Obviously, you can still stand far behind in the backline trying to poke people down, but if you get flanked on and you don't have a peeler, the only thing that helps you survive are your flash and your ultimate. So in comparison, you have champions like Ezreal, Vayne, Lucian, high mobility champions that are super hard to kill. Ezreal, good poking damage, high mobility. Corki, insane in teamfights, good poking damage. Kai'Sa, I guess complete package. More like an assassin ADC. I feel like with the ultimate, jumping in is like more like an assassin ADC in comparison. Has shield, does tons of damage. Vayne has invisibility, has true damage, has the condemn to stun people, has infinite mobility. Lucian, infinite mobility, infinite damage. Samira, infinite sustain, tons of fucking damage, great playmaking potential, one ultimate, one good ultimate in a team fight, boom, pentakill. It's so easy. She is so fucking easy to play. I mean, you need a good understanding about when you can go in, when are the major abilities out, when can you actually commit for the ultimate. If you understand that, it's very easy to make it work. Tristana, one of the best, probably the best late game scaling champion, honestly. Let's see, we have Jinx, who's also... I think Tristana scales just harder. Tristana in the early game, stronger than Jinx. She's stronger than Jinx in the early game. And she scales way harder as well. One of the best, like if you have like a Tristana Lulu, Tristana Yumi in the late game, it's an FF angle, guys. It's an FF angle. Too much damage. One of the best late game scaling champions. Saya, very consistent champion, great surf peeling champion with the ultimate, overall super solid. Caitlyn, super solid, long range champion. Jinx, in the early game, not the greatest, but scales like a fucking truck. Draven, one of the best early game ADCs, super good at snowballing, does tons of damage, but lack of mobility in the late game and very hard to play as well. And plus short range in comparison to other ADCs. Senna got buffed, does decent amount of damage, I would say, but very scaling. I think Senna support is stronger, actually, or fits better. But with the right team comp, you can definitely make Senna ADC work. Misfortune, very strong in the early game, good laner, good team fights with the ultimate, but falls off in comparison to other ADCs. Plus, lack of mobility, or should I say lack of dashing abilities. So it's very easy to kill Misfortune. When she's using the ultimate, it's very fucking easy to flank on her or commit on her, because during the ultimate, she can't move. Same applies for Jhin, by the way. Jhin very strong in the early game. He falls off. Wait. Oh, I forgot to try out Lord Dominic's Jhin. I said that Lord Dominic's Jhin in the next patch will be S tier. Because now, he does way more damage with Lord Dominic's, because he can proc the next... Wait. I mean, the next auto attack with Lord Dominic's does way more damage now because of the attack speed. Early game strong. Early game really, really strong. Mid game really strong still. Late game, in comparison to other ADCs, not as strong because of the lack of range. Should I say lack of range? Yeah, the first ability is pretty short range. Like every other can just auto attack from a billion miles away. The ultimate, you have to stand still as well, which is a downside. I mean, it's pretty long range, but still. Late game, he doesn't do as much damage as other ADCs. Ashe. I guess Ashe is like one ADC for utility. She has good utility, good playmaking potential, but doesn't do as much damage. I'm just gonna summarize the other poking mages again. Karma, Lux, Orianna, and Ziggs are great poking mages that do decent amount of damage from far away. They don't really fit solo queue meta though. And I think in solo queue, the games will always go late game. And late game ADCs are just stronger than poking mages in comparison. Like the reason why poking mages are so popular and competitive is because the Luden's Rush power spike is stronger in the early game than in comparison to other ADCs that need to scale. But in solo queue, you will always get 20 minutes almost every time. So those late game hard carry ADCs like a Tristana, like a Vayne, like an Ezreal, they are just much better. And Brand and Morgana are just weaker versions of them because they're more short-ranged, and it's much easier to kill them in comparison. Plus, Morgana's pretty fucking weak in the early game. Let's move on to support. Okay, for support, S+ tier, we have Karma, still one of the best poking champions, provides tons of utility in team fights. Yumi, Yumi is so often must ban because a lot of games tend to go into late game, and Yumi plus ADC in late game is unplayable. It does matter. Yumi on ADC, the ADC becomes a 1 versus 9 monster. It's unplayable. This champion is still broken. I don't know. I was always like, she is as strong as. Is she really broken? Yeah, honestly, in the current meta, she is broken. There are too many late game ADCs right now. And the late game ADC plus Yumi is unplayable. Vayne, Tristana, Jinx with a Yumi, it's unplayable. Or even Lucian with Yumi, it's unplayable. Next one. I'm gonna put them more together, by the way, so they fit better. Like this. Okay, and for the first 5 tanky supports, we have Rakan, Thresh, Gragas, Nautilus, and Alistar. They are great tanky playmaking supports with a lot of crowd control and being super tanky as well. Very good tanks. If you want to play playmaking support, go for these. 5 tanky supports. If you guys want to play a full playmaking support, then Pyke is the option. Pyke, great playmaking potential and great carry with the ultimate as well. He can carry team fights. His hook is also better than Blitzcrank to catch people. Then we have Lux, who's like AP enchanter with, AP poking enchanter with a lot of damage. The Bind is good at catching people. Then we have Senna, who is also like a utility poking champion with a lot of damage in the late game. Needs the right team comp though. Remember, pick here with the Nessus, with the Gregors maybe. Most of the times you need frontline as well. If you have like 2 frontliners, go for the Senna. It's fine. Even if you have double ADC, it can work if you have 2 tanks. If you have no tanks, don't pick Senna support. Next one, Jenna, Nami, Lulu. These are 3 enchanters, while Lulu is more like a Yumi, because she is buffing. She's a buffing, empowering enchanter that buffs the ADC, makes him strong, gives him attack and movement speed, very strong. While Jenna and Nami are more like peelers. Jenna is a peeler, good poking damage, the ultimate and first ability to peel, and Nami with the ultimate to peel or make plays, or the bubble for peeling and playmaking. Then we have Ashe, who is like a playmaking utility support, using the ultimate to catch people. Okay, Soraka got nerfed, but I think she's still A tier. In the right team comps, she can be really good. If you have enough frontline, you can just keep healing them up. And from far away, she provides a lot of healing value. But overall, she's kind of situational pick in my opinion. Now we have Leona, Galio, Braum, Set that are weaker than the other tanky playmaking supports in my opinion, for different reasons. Leona, because she is more single target. Galio, because he is kind of reliant on the enemy team comp if they're like AP. If they're like full AP, then he's like an S tier. But if they're like full physical damage, I think other tanks are better. He has decent playmaking potential though. But I think the issue I see is more high skill ceiling comparison. I mean, Rakan is also high skill ceiling. But Rakan is like, he has knock up, he has AoE taunt for free. While Galio is like, you need to EW or Flash W or something. His gap closing is just not as easy. Like, Rakan is so easy. He has like infinite jumps. Like, it feels like his infinite jumps. Braum, also more single target. Like, his stun is single target. He has the ultimate, sure, but look at it in comparison to Alistar. Alistar has an ultimate that gives him like 60% damage reduction. He has the AoE knockup combo every 10 seconds or something, or even shorter than 10 seconds. It's like, why would you pick Braum then? Braum is also situational. You want to pick him into poking compositions because his shield can reduce the damage of poking damage, like against a Misfortune, for example. Braum's shield can be very fucking good. And Set, on the other hand, is, I feel like he's very hard to master and play in solo queue. Like, he is very popular in Europe competitive, but I feel like in solo queue it's not that easy to pull off. He's not as tanky as the other champions. And he has, I don't know. I feel like in the Baron he's just better because you're allowed to farm up and he skates with items so fucking hard. While his base stats are okay, I feel like he needs items, and as a support you won't get items. Blitzcrank, very situational coin flip champion. If you master the hooks, you can be good, but he's very, very situational. Annie, pretty weak in the early game, has some playmaking potential with the out. I don't know why you put this champion. You shouldn't play this champion in support role, to be fair. Honestly, let's just put her out. Sona, Seraphine, they are very weak in the early game. Very weak in the early game. And I don't like champions that are very weak in the early game. Because majority of the times, if you pick these 2 champions, you will end up losing the lane because they're too fucking weak. Like, if you have let's say you have a fucking strong Draven, and then you pick Sona, you're literally inting the Draven, because if you put like a Draven with a Thresh, or Rakan, Or I don't know, Nautilus, he would be so much better. But with a Sona, you're just like inting him. You're inting the laning phase because these champions are so too fucking weak. Yes, they can be good in the late game, but they also need the right setup. Like they need the decent amount of frontline to make them work. So in my opinion, they are okay. They can work. They can be good. But I like champions that are strong in the early game, or they are super scaling, like godly scaling. Godly scaling. Then it's fine, or they have like playmaking potential or good peeling potential. And I think Sona doesn't really have good peeling. She has the ultimate, sure. And Seraphine the same. They don't have. They have zero peeling. They have zero peeling, by the way. I don't like that. It's very easy to dive these champions. It's very easy to punish them. They are very weak in the early mid game. Shen, on the other hand, same explanation like Set, to be fair. Very similar. I feel like he isn't as good. He's not really meant as a support. I just put him because I don't know. I should put him out, to be fair. I see they're always explaining this champion. I see they're explaining Cinch, honestly. Morgana, okay, Morgana's fine. Because the only reason I had Cinch support is because fucking Leo was spamming Cinch and Hilo. He was like the only Cinch player that keeps spamming it, and honestly can be good as a cheesy factor, but honestly don't play it. Morgana, very weak laning phase. Very weak laning phase. She has decent amount of utility with a bind, but if you're bad at hitting binds, don't play this champion. You're inting everyone. Don't play it. I think she's much better as a jungler or mid laner, not as a support necessary. I think even as an APC, she's much better than as a support. There are just better options. I mean, she has the Black Shield, obviously, for utility. She has the bind, she has the ultimate. But I feel like as a support, there are better options. I would rather go Lux Nami than Morgana. I would also rather go Karma. Karma has better poking damage, has more utility, is way better in the early game as well. As an AoE nuke, as an ultimate, on low cooldown. Gives mobility non-stop to everyone. But yeah, that's it for the YouTube video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And if you guys enjoyed it, make sure to leave a like, make sure to subscribe. Write down below your comments Write down below your opinion in the comments, and I see you next time. Bye bye.